go down. I am a waterfall skipping home. I am a waterfall skipping home. I am a waterfall skipping home. My roots go down. My roots go down, down to the earth. My roots go down, down to the earth. My roots go down, down to the earth. My roots go down.
Hello, everybody. Allow me to start sharing my stuff that I have for y'all. I had it ready, and it just didn't work out. All right. All right, welcome everyone to Spiral Scouts International presents Pagan Parenting Discussion. I am Aedis LaVeau. I have a background in comparative religion, nonviolent communication, and dispute resolution. I have a bachelor's in modern languages and now ministry, thanks to the Wiccan Seminary. I have an MBA. I'm a second degree priestess with the WISE ATC under the tutelage of Belladonna LaVeau and Dusty Dion. And I'm also the CEO for Spiral Scouts International. My great work has been for the past 8 years, family ministry. At first I thought it was children's ministry, but it turns out you can't have children's ministry without parents, without the rest of the family. So that is how we look at it now. So if you have a pencil, paper to take a few notes, I would love for y'all to share, to write down a few of your ideas for the following questions so that when we get to them later on, we can have a discussion about them. Sorry.
Aedis, do you mind if I read these out loud for anybody that might not be able to? Okay, great. First question is, when you were growing up, what spiritual path did your family take? The next question is, what do you do to spend time as a family? Do you have any spiritual family traditions? What is your biggest challenge as a pagan parent? Do you have any strong feelings about raising pagan kids and schooling? What is the difference between kid-friendly, kid-centered, and family-centered events? Do you have a strong community and support system as a pagan parent? And last but not least, how will you know if you have had a successful life?
Thank you so much, Namir. I will give you all about 10 more seconds to jot down notes, and then we'll start this.
I'm making a special.
There's another one at the end that is, how do you navigate the broom closet? Now, these are all very personal questions that only you can answer, only you can decide, you and any partners that you might have that are raising kids, that are raising teenagers, that are helping young adults learn to navigate the world. Okay. So the agenda for this meeting, we already talked about who I am. We're going to talk about home, community, the world, and then we're going to exchange some resources because I find the more information we have, the better we can make decisions and make the best choices for ourselves. So we start with home. We all come from the goddess, and we've all seen pictures of the goddess, you know, fertility, pregnant, and all that. One of the things that I have learned through this family ministry is that your home is the body of the goddess. And I know Namir is going, yeah, yes, yeah. So when you were growing up, your spiritual path that your family took might have been the same as what you're doing now, might have been very different. A lot of us, I think, had a very different upbringing than where we're at now. Would anyone like to share?
I'll share. Growing up, I came from kind of a split family. My mother was a Christian, and my stepfather was an atheist. But I did have a partial pagan upbringing because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and my grandparents were active practicing pagans. Although they did not present it as a faith, I was taught how to put together an altar. I was taught the quarters and the energies associated with such. My grandmother taught me how to forage and gather for magical herbs and taught me how to use them to make charms and medicines and that sort of thing.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. If y'all want to share in the chat, you're also welcome to do that. This is a discussion. This is as much about y'all as it is about me and what I'm doing over here. So, Sammy, did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, my background is quite interesting because I've gone through a lot of things. But in my family, with my mother growing up, I grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian background, which was very hard for me being LGBT. And but eventually I moved in with my dad because my parents were divorced from a young age. And my dad, although he is a Christian, is not a very like orthodox Christian, or a very like um, intense kind of Christian. So he let me go to church where I wanted to, and I got to pick to go to a more progressive Christian church. So I moved from being a very inconsistent in doxology fundamentalist Christian to a very progressive LGBT inclusive Christian. And I just found through experience of my own my pagan path, and that worked better for me. So my family upbringing was very different from this, but I've learned a lot about the different kinds of ministries that you can provide children that lead and youth and young adults that lead to inquisitive minds that ask healthy questions and have healthy boundaries. And the tradition I come from is pretty unique too, because it also has a whole life sexual education program that they built alongside another religious group that was.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Sammy. I have a few people sharing in the comments. I like to tell people I am culturally Catholic because that's where I come from, but that's not where I'm at. So what do y'all do to spend time as a family? This is more the meat of what we want to talk about. Hi, Camille. We have a lot of traditions that we do as pagans or just as people. So I thought that talking about our traditions, our spiritual traditions, or our mundane traditions would be helpful to give ourselves ideas. Miracle?
Well, there was a lot that I did when my children were younger. We have a lot of traditions based around the pagan holidays. But now that they've become adults, we actually spend less time together doing that stuff. So, but we used to do cool things like one of our Yule traditions is to get a live tree from the nursery, which we then decorate. And then we set it outside and we plant it at Beltane. So it goes into the garden, is planted so that the cycle of life continues. And that was one of our little traditions that we used to do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we don't have that ability here in Houston, but where you live, I'm sure is a lot more friendly for that. So yeah, fantastic. Does anyone do the Wheel of the Year with their kids? Cooking show.
That is what I would do. That's what my plan is. Like, I'm reinforcing the wheel for my own traditions before I have children. And then, yeah, if it's to their joy, I'll absolutely utilize it.
Yeah, I have large folder for each of the 8 holidays. And inside I have activities, crafts, all sorts of things, because we like to get in it and explore. What is y'all's biggest challenge? Oh, I'm sorry, Miracle, you have something else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that I think it's great that there's a lot more available to pagan families and more ideas and resources now for pagan families to decide what traditions and such they want. When I was raising my kids, there wasn't a lot, so I just kind of had to wing it. So I think that this is awesome, what you're doing here. And I really love the idea that new pagan families actually have some resources to go to and to draw on. I think that's really awesome.
Thank you, Miracle. Yeah, it's from 2012 when my first was born to now. Even that short amount of time has given us a whole lot of more information. Like Camille said, hookah pages will always be my favorite. Um, I'm sorry, I'm going to need a moment. Okay, so once we deal with our home, our family, we also have to see what we have in our community. And ye shall dance, sing, make music, and love, all in my praise. So what are some of y'all's ideas about schooling and your pagan kids? Miracle.
I know I'm just chatty Cathy this morning, aren't I? I homeschooled my children. So that I had the ability to, well, I didn't have to get up early. My selfish reason, but also so that I could create my own curriculum and include my faith in the curriculum and raise them without the input of the government. So I found homeschooling was quite a blessing to me. I know that most people aren't able, they don't have the luxury to be able to homeschool, but I really found that helped me raising pagan kids and schooling them.
Absolutely. Homeschooling is definitely an option. I have my older child is in public school and my younger child is in homeschool. And so I like the idea that we can teach our kids our values and still be able to, have them have cultural literacy. Yeah, that's a tough. Michelle writes that she doesn't like it when teachers will put their beliefs on the kids, and I feel the same way. Proselytizing, no matter what age you're doing it to, I don't like it. It's icky. We have a hand up. Steven.
Hello, everyone. I'm a late bloomer, but I have tutored for more than 11 years. I'm a retired math professor, and I found that one-on-one is really a good thing because I have seen so much growth amongst my students for many, many years. I taught 11 years in Florida state system.
That's fantastic. Thank you for your input. Thank you for being here. Sammy, you had something to say.
Sorry, I was struggling with my technology there. So something that I've experienced as a person growing up in public school and who has been involved in like children's and families ministry, faith formation ministries in different faith groups, um, is that minoritized religions and just non-conventional Christianity are often pushed aside in school with bullying and are not covered in the curriculum in schools. So kids often feel like their beliefs are not recognized and things are not done to prevent that bullying and to make kids feel welcome who come from different cultural backgrounds. I remember very vividly the bullying of like Muslim and Hindu students when I was in school. There weren't a lot of like openly pagan people at school with me when I was in school, but I know that the way that minoritized religions, because not all of them are minority religions, in the United States and Canada have been dealt with, can be really toxic. And that's why I really think that it's important to provide religious education in schools, even if it's not like, I don't want people to get proselytized, but I want people to know what people believe and learn how to respect that. And like, they'll cover the major religions, but they often don't cover us as pagans. And so that becomes especially difficult because of the awful things that children say about witches, because they're taught them by their parents, right? And their faith community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Sammy. I have had similar, like I said, my eldest is in public school, so she has to write about what she's celebrating this weekend, and so it makes for an interesting time. We have been very blessed in the fact that my kids know who they are, and so they're able to stand up for that, and then they are able to communicate their needs. Beyond our community, we have, beyond our own home and our schools, we have our community, and a lot of events have different wording, and so I wanted to bring up the difference between kid-friendly, kid-centric, and family-centric events. A lot of times when you see kid-friendly, that does not mean that there's going to be anything for your kids to do. So if you have under 13, you're probably going to have 3 bored kids that are going to be interrupting things. Not always, but oftentimes. Whereas kid-centered, the grown-ups really have nothing to do. So you can only make bridges cross so many times before you're like, okay, I'm done, right? And so I like to get this idea across of family-oriented events wherein there is enough for everybody to do. It does not ignore the children. It does not ignore the parents. And that's part of how I went from, oh no, I'm a children's shrine coordinator. No, I'm a parent. I'm a family coordinator, so does anyone have any other words that are keywords that are used that sometimes you think is going to be okay and it ends up not being okay for your family? I like what you put, Camille. Kids are allowed, but they're an afterthought, and their attendance is not supported. They don't have experience. Miracle, you have something.
Well, pretty much actually you just touched on it. Where it's like family welcome or children welcome, it doesn't always mean that that's going to be there's going to be anything for your children to do. And I honestly really wish that people wouldn't do that, right? Because it creates an awkward situation for both the parent and the child, right? And you're spending all your time trying to shush your children and keep them calm and get them to sit down. And people should just really just be honest and say, this is not a child event, right? And, there's not going to be anything here for your children to do. And that would really make it easier for us as parents, rather than them using these words like kid-friendly, just to drum up their own numbers, just to have more people attend. Oh, more people will attend if we let them bring their kids. So we'll let them bring their kids. But the thing is that ruins the experience for the parent and makes things difficult for everybody else attending too. And I just wish they wouldn't do that.
Definitely. Esme, you have something. Thank you for sharing, Miracle. You have something to share with us?
Yeah, so I've noticed that even at events that are kid friendly, that people with children leave them at home. And that might be because, kid friendly events aren't actually that friendly, as we've been discussing. But it also makes it seem like there isn't a need for kid friendly events because the kids aren't visible within the community. I'm not trying to point fingers or blame anyone. I just think that that's an interesting dynamic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Esme. I know you have a 15-month-old, so you're starting to especially now when we're starting to get in-person meetings and things like that. Do I bring my kid? Do I leave them with grandma? I mean, yeah. And then Namir brought up a very important point that she personally struggles with skyclad friendly events that also have children involved. And for that one, I want to point out Spring Mysteries. When we do Spring Mysteries in person, Parade to the Sea, you have the sea priests and priestesses. They are essentially without clothes. My kids, I have taken other friends with their kids. I have taken a whole lot of kids to Spring Mysteries. I have never once had a kid with a problem or a parent with a problem, because it's not a sexual thing. So they tend to be a little more relaxed about it. And so I think I had one 3-year-old say, "Mommy, she's naked." But other than that, yeah, it was that out of 8 years or so that I've been doing this.
That didn't even occur to me, because that wasn't even, because that doesn't bother me, because I feel like it is a select, and it's done really well, and it's done really respectfully. But I've been to other pagan groups outside the ATC where there's like naked adults sitting with naked children, and like we're all like, and I don't know, it just makes me feel like ooh weird. So that's where my struggle is. But you're right, actually, at the Parade to the Sea, I've never had that issue. That's cool. All right, I appreciate that experience.
Conversely, the Aphrodite ritual, I wouldn't take my kids there. I don't think it's a child-friendly event. So, or sometimes Beltane. A lot of places I know, they do not have children-friendly Beltanes. So, yeah, Miracle, you had something else to bring up.
Yeah, well, I, of course, raised my children in pagan traditions. And I was actually going to say some of the same of what you just said. Like, there are certain skyclad events that I would not take my children to. But because I was raised amongst hippies, and so everybody was naked, my children have also been raised the same way. So everybody's been naked, and with them, when they were younger, they didn't even comment on it. Like, it's normal for them. So, but I did notice, even when we were at the Tab and a group of adults were going down to the river, and I was like, yeah, you can take the kids if you want. There was some hesitance because they were going to be skinny dipping. And I was like, oh no, don't worry about my kids with that. They're fine. And, Verity went in her clothes and Morgan went in naked, and it was all good. So,
yeah, I'm loving this discussion, because I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't bother me. So it's making me examine when the times it did bother me, and if it was my instinct telling me that this isn't safe right now. But it's never been with ATC. Very clearly, it has never been with the ATC.
Yeah, exactly.
I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for interacting and sharing in the comments as well. The next topic I wanted to talk about was the Earth, because we all share this flying spaceship. No matter what background we have, no matter who we are, where we came from, or where we're going. And so that brings its own challenges. Namely, what do you think is a successful life? So therefore, that's what you're teaching your children. And how do you navigate the broom closet situation? Like, for example, I have an AC guy right here, and he's just going to have to deal. So. Would anyone like to share?
Well, I have always told my children that they should strive to be happy, and that they should be conscious of the rule of 3. But I really don't do the successful life thing. My parents did that with me. You need to have a career, you need to have a husband, you need to work yourself to death, you must have the house, you must have the things, you must do this exactly this way. And I think really all I've ever told my children is if you're happy, you're successful.
Absolutely. Sammy, you had something to add to that. Thank you, Miracle, for sharing.
I really enjoy this part of the conversation in particular. I think a lot of people have, in our society, there are certain views of what success should be. And I don't necessarily agree with those because they're very, even though I'm a Capricorn, because they're very capitalistic and they're very exploitive or exploitative. I can say words, English. But I think ultimately what is important is to have that conversation with your children, because your idea of what success is going to be different than what theirs is when they grow up. So it's, in my opinion, I think it's best to um, share what you have done to figure out what is a successful life for you with your children and help them to do that on their own. Because really, ultimately, when they're 25, they're not going to be able to use the building blocks that you use to build a successful life, because their lives are different. So you want them to be able to have the tools to be happy with their life and view their success through their own lenses. Because I think ultimately that's going to avoid trauma in the long term. So that's my
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Sammy, for sharing that. Yes, we have Cara. She wants to share as well. I'm sorry, pronouns. I forgot to ask you for pronouns. I forgot to mention my own. Apologies.
It's okay. I am she, her, or they. So, how will I know if I've had a successful life? My thoughts on that are making sure my kids are able to take care of themselves and lead a happy life that they see is fit for them. That's how I will know that I've led a successful life. As for the broom closet,
jokes. We do jokes.
Starting to figure that out myself, honestly, because I grew up a very Christian lifestyle. So I'm starting to navigate the non-Christian aspects of spirituality. So
Absolutely. And that question is really personal. I know people who are in the broom closet. I know people who are quite out. Some of us are public figures, so we have no choices sometimes. Michelle, you had something to share with us.
Yeah, so as far as a successful life goes, I've told my kids they're successful if they're happy and all their bills are paid, and that's, successful to us. Nothing fancy. But the broom closet, we live in a small Mormon town in Utah, and it's actually been amazing to me that we have found other pagans locally, and they're the people that we are out to. And we just kind of found each other by accident. And it's been wonderful. It's like, you're paid too? Blessed be, you know? And, I let things slide into conversations with people that I'm not sure about. Like, I've got a spiritual festival that I'm going to this weekend, things like that. And then, they might ask, because obviously I'm not Mormon, if I'm going to a spiritual festival over the weekend. And so, we don't hide it. I tell my kids that our religion is our business and nobody else's, and other people's religions are their business and nobody else's. And we shouldn't be pushing our religion on anybody, and nobody should be pushing their religion on us. And my children have teachers at school that do push, talk about their religion in class because they assume all the kids are Mormon, and I don't like that. But that's where we're at.
Absolutely. I'm here in Houston, Texas, and yeah, sometimes you got to keep, like, I am not, obviously not in the broom closet, but sometimes I don't advertise. Sammy, you wanted to share something with us.
I feel like as a queer person, I'm very familiar with closets, right? So what I find is that both as a witch and as a trans person, and someone who formerly identified as a gay male, um, I find that I am consistently in a process of coming out of a closet. So no matter how out I am, and ever since I was like 16, I decided like I'm just out, right? Like I'm not fighting or hiding anymore. But contextually, it's important, I think, sometimes to decide when it is and isn't appropriate to share certain things, right? So we're always in that process of, is it safe for me to reveal this information to someone right now? And so at work, oftentimes, someone might misgender me, or someone might ask me like a weirdly personal religious question, and I have to decide in that moment if this person is someone safe to share that information with, especially since I'm at work, right? So I think that's something to keep in mind too, right? Is navigating the broom closet ultimately is about staying safe. So we want to make sure who it is that we're sharing with and in what context it is most appropriate. And that's not me saying like you should hide yourself at work, but you have to decide like, is this person going to do something that will harm me or make my work life more difficult? Is this person someone who is sharing this with, like asking me this because they saw that I'm wearing like a pagan piece of jewelry and they want to learn more about my coven or my church? And that's how I kind of navigate that, is like, who's asking me and what signs can I see that this person is a safe person to share that with?
Absolutely. Safety is number one for sure for us as adults, and doubly so for our children. Yeah. Miracle, did you wanted to say something?
Yeah. I often say, I was never in the broom closet. And I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but because of, the things that I learned from my grandmother not being presented as a faith, I wouldn't say I was in the broom closet, but I would say that I was unaware of the fact that I was pagan. Just as for a good part of my life, I was unaware of the fact that I was pansexual, is because of my fundamental upbringing with my mother as a Christian. Um, I had, you're taught that things are wrong, which really aren't wrong. And to a point where you tend to lose connection with your own identity. Like you're so focused on keeping with the fundamentals of what you've been taught that you don't even really have a full awareness of what your own personal spectrum as a human being is. Like it's just not there. And sometimes it takes a while to come to an awareness of who and what you are because of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Miracle. So on the note of broom closet and what makes a successful life, I heard a whole lot of being happy and being able to pay my bills. And I think that as paying parents is one of the obstacles that we have to overcome, is our phobia of money and success. I have talked to a lot of parents who have been like, well, we got the bills paid, but I kind of wish we had a little more. It's like, well, no, why are you wishing for a little more? Wish for a lot more. Wish for the ability to support your family, your community, the earth, So that is something that we have to think about, and it's a very personal decision. So that brings us to the next slide. So the Spiral Scouts, if y'all don't know, has a model of 3 foundations. the personal responsibility, social responsibility, and environmental responsibility. So that is exactly what we covered in this discussion. I wanted to, before we end, I wanted to share the leader's commitment with you, because this is what we say, and well, in my circle, we say it at the end of every meeting. Every single person in the meeting has an affirmation that is theirs. For the leaders, it's, I commit myself to guiding tomorrow's leaders, to help heal the pains of yesterday, to share my wisdom and truth today, and to continue to learn and love every day and every step of my path. So I would love if y'all could share resources, whether it's family traditions, anything like that. If you want to be on this workshop, email me, CEO@spiralscouts.org, and give me information. We are always looking to have those resources available, because like someone was saying, you don't have the knowledge, then how can you know that you are who you are? So books that have influenced me personally as a parent are Circle Round. And funny enough, the Sevenfold Journey, which is not a parenting book at all, but it does talk about our lives and our what is it called, milestones, so that you can know where your kids are at, know where you're at, where your teens are at, and it is a really helpful book for that. If anybody else wants to share any books or any, community, that's a really important one. Thank you, Miracle. You have been our crone for this meeting, so thank you so much. The Crone and the Sage are a really good community resource, and even if they're not of the same tradition, that they're not the same religion, they still will have something to tell you. You just sometimes got to dig. Sammy.
So I'm a really big advocate for whole life sexuality education, and that's something that I received in my previous faith group with resources that are interfaith. So I grew up in the United Church of Christ as a teenager and young adult, and they're a very progressive Christian denomination, and they worked with the Unitarian Universalists, who are an interfaith faith, to create a curriculum called Our Whole Lives, which is a really great curriculum to check out. You can be trained in it in order to deliver age-appropriate sexuality education for different age groups, all the way from like young children to older adults. And so that sexuality education program is really great to make sure that we're keeping our children and families and members of our community safe and healthy and holy and engaging in their sexuality and gender identity in very whole and healthy ways.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Sammy. Yes, we have the privilege of doing our Pagan Pride at the UU here in Houston, and they have an excellent children's area, which I've heard that the rest of the place is really nice, but I don't hardly ever get out of the children's area. So programs like Sammy mentioned, Moondust Press Books. Thank you, Camille. There are sometimes events that are family centered, and they're not always pagan, but sometimes they are. And this is going to be the more exposure the people who put these events on are to the fact that we have kids and they're all ages and they're going to want to experience it in their level. The more events that we'll be able to say are family centered. Other resources, I heard somebody mention Little Pagan Acorns, which I love. I actually had, when I was preparing for this meeting, for this workshop, I found an awesome article that I'm going to put in the chat. that is just from March that talks about being a parent and how these resources are available. Yay! All right. Does anyone else have any resources to share, either in chat or in speech?
I have some that I will send you by email later.
Thank you, Miracle. Yeah, Dusty Dion's books are awesome. We have the Kira Nuno's book, and that is my eldest's favorite. She's about to be 10, and she still loves that book. She talks about, what is it? I'm trying to remember the name of it. Great-tailed grackle came to me, so I gotta figure out a new way of doing my work because it's not working the way that I'm trying. You know, things like that. So. Dillo Armadillo absolutely is a great book as well. I have not bought it yet, but I was able to read it. Very cool. So yeah, I will be posting a resources section based on this chat and other community chats that I've had with resources like this so that we can all learn more and be the best parents we can be the best community members we can be, because even above and beyond, sometimes I don't do anything with my kids, but I still have a youth area or a children's area, just even if my kids aren't there, because I know that I'm not alone here, right? So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful festival, and I look forward to seeing y'all at the next thing.
Thank you, Aedis, for this presentation.
Thanks,
It was really
Aedis.
great. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Namir, do you know what the next event is?
Yes, I do. It's a wonderful event. I'm very excited. I'm not buying time while I pull up the schedule. Oh yeah, of course. It's with Elder Hedworth, and it's Awakening the Inner Fire. I was just so excited I had to draw that out.
Speaking of community resources, Elder is a very,
I
very
can drop the link in the chat to make it nice and easy. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. This was a great discussion. I learned a lot.
Thank you, Aedis.
Thank you, Aedis.
Great job, Aedis. Thank you.
Thank